Hi, I'm Opalyn and I'm here going to show you a little bit about a Rake loom. This is a loom that I was introduced to about a year ago, and this particular one has 16 pegs. So each peg fits in a slot and has a hole drilled through it near the base. So we'll move over here and you choose a thread for your warp and you thread all of your pegs. And I'm using a 2-strand. Most people that I know that use this loom do this as well. So you have a fold here, kind of just like threading a needle. And then you set it right in the peg, in the slot. And then we'll thread our last needle. And again, it's just like threading a sewing needle. And the trickiest part about all this is keeping your threads from getting tangled. So the first time I warped this loom up, I ended up getting them tangled and spent almost an hour straightening everything out. So everything that you can do to keep your threads from getting tangled to begin with will help. So tying them off in bundles of 4 is what I decided to do. So now that I have these last 4 done, I'm just going to grab them and bring the threads down and tie a knot. Just a slip knot to keep everything contained. And then I'm going to take my yarn. This is what a finished piece could look like. This is quite dense, so I've squished everything together, and that's because I wanted to just have it readily available to pull off the bottom so that I could show you how this loom works. Now I'm going to leave a little bit of a tail. I'm going to slide this over. And I'm just going to go between every set of pegs. So to the front, to the back, to the front, to the back, all the way across. And it doesn't matter how high on the pegs you do this, you'll be able to slide it down. And then start heading back. So you want to do this. You go around the end peg, and that puts everything on the opposite side of the peg as it was before. And every once in a while you'll get your thread caught. But we also want to tuck in this tail, so we're going to weave it back as well. And around the end peg and to the front of one peg, the back of the next, front, back, and I'm just going to leave it sticking out the back side so that I can trim it off. And so this is a 16 peg loom. You can do it with an even number or an odd number of pegs. Some people make these at home in their wood shop. You can also find them online relatively reasonably. You can start with dowels and then start drilling holes in a board. And I've seen small diameter pegs, large diameter pegs. I've seen 8 or 16 pegs. This is a 16 peg. I've even seen boards that are significantly longer that have 50 or 60 pegs. And you just keep going one end to the other, going front, back. And if you want to keep going, you can just slide everything down, and that'll give you some extra space, and you can just keep right on weaving. This loom is probably one of the most packable or travelable looms that I have. It's a small size and relatively easy. Similar in packability or transportability as a pin loom or a weavette. And it's much easier to transport than even a rigid heddle loom, which is one that's quite often taken to shows or classes. This one's not quite as easy to pack as a knitting or crochet project, but relatively simple to set up and work with. So now here's the neat part. This is where we transfer the weft, all of these threads, down onto the warp. So you just pick up a peg and put it back in its hole. Pick up a peg and slide the warp off. And the warp is transferring from the peg onto the, the weft is being transferred from the peg down onto the warp threads. So we'll just keep working our way across. And at this point I usually start back so that I have more thread on the pegs, but I'm just going to go all the way across for demonstration. And then I'll slide the fabric down on to the warp threads. And sometimes the pegs come out, you just stand them right back up. And there you have a small section of fabric. And you can do this, you can stretch everything out so that you have a really wide or open weave. You can also grab all of your threads and tighten everything up. I'm actually going to go this way because it's a little easier to pull all the fabric threads down. Tighten them up by moving this way. So you can really choose and vary your density throughout your project. And the piece actually opens up. It's a little bit wider now than the pegs, and that has to do with the thickness of the weft thread as well as the diameter of the peg. So if you have really big pegs, then you'll have a more open structure, and small pegs like this tend to be closer than the larger diameter pegs. So there's an introduction to the Rake loom, and I'm looking forward to exploring homespun yarns and felting this or fulling the fiber and seeing how that works to make a really quick, somewhat windproof felted fabric. So just one of the many things you can do with a Rake loom. Thanks for watching.